Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is Hunter from Outtenastrophotography, back with another video of the workflow Pixinsight series. Now, in the last video we did processing on broadband with galaxies. Now today we are going to be going in towards the narrowband for one-shot color, but not just particularly any type of narrowband. We are going to be recreating the Hubble palette with sulfur, hydrogen alpha, and oxygen 3 data, and with two narrowband filters that I use, the ASCAR D1 and D2 series. We're going to be going through a step-by-step process of how to get the Hubble palette with two different narrowband filters and combining them together to create one SHO image from a one-shot color camera. So for today, I am going to be using some old data. I haven't had a chance to shoot any more because now it's galaxy season. There's not really much in the way of nebulas to really start new projects with. So today, we're going to be using some old data, and the data of choice is going to be the Monkey Head Nebula that I did a couple of months ago. Over here on the top left, this is with the ASCAR D1, which is the hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3. You can see it is a very nice filter in general. You can see all the red there is the hydrogen alpha, and then towards the center, like this whitish color here, is the oxygen 3 that was picked up. And then over towards the right side, we have the ASCAR D2, which is an oxygen 3 and sulfur 2, and you can see the sulfur and the outside is really some nice structure inside of this nebula in itself, and this green in the middle, that is all the extra oxygen. So the really nice part with doing SHO imaging with one-shot color cameras, especially if you have both narrowband filters, you kind of get, one night you get your hydrogen alpha, another night or another time you can get your sulfur, but you also end up with two oxygens that you can use for both of them and combine them together, which oxygen is definitely the hardest to get anyway because it's most affected by light pollution, and it's just a lot lower in the signal to noise ratio. So these are completely linear right now, fresh out of the stack. We're gonna go ahead and first take care of any imperfections in the background, and a simple tool that I like to use sometimes, I either use dynamic background extraction, or in this case, what some others like to use is Graxpert. Now within Pixinsight, there is a built-in Graxpert now. You just have to make sure you download the latest one on your desktop PC to be able to use this within the Pixinsight toolbox, which I'll be including the repository for that down in the description below, and I'll be adding any other repositories that I use every time that I normally do imaging and processing, so you all can have it as well. There's some that are paid and some that are free to use for the public. So for not making this video like 45 minutes or so, we're just going to be using Graxpert at first for both of our images. So this opens up a new window. I usually put it on subtraction with a smoothing factor right around 0.6. Hit the check mark and it will go through the processes in itself to kind of take care of any gradients that happen to be in the background, and you're going to want to do it for both of them. Now after we have applied Graxpert to both images, now we are going to be using a paid tool from RC Astro. If you remember from the last video, we are going to be using 3 of RC Astro's tools. I'm going to be including those down in the description. This is the paid repositories, but definitely highly recommend getting them because they make your life so much easier and it just brings up so much more detail to your images. So what we are first going to be doing is using Blur Exterminator. Now, I am going to be doing 2 separate layers of Blur Exterminator for this. One for correct only. This is just to basically make the stars nice and round. You can see from both of them, if you have any imperfections in your tracking in the night, or you have a little bit of some wind, or you got a little bit of like an astigmatism with some of your optics, this will cure the problem for both of them. So definitely run both in correct only for both of these images with Blur Exterminator. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, now that we did the correct only, look at the difference between the two images when I go back and forth. So this is what it was like before. Definitely pay attention to this star here. Seems a little bit of like an egg shape, but after using the correct only for Blur Exterminator, it fixes that issue quite nicely. And the same goes for the other one too. You can see I have a little bit of some wonky looking stars from just tracking issues. When you apply Blur Exterminator, it fixes those issues right away. So that's the wonderful thing about that tool. But then we're going to take another run of it, but this time we're going to uncheck the correct only, and we're just going to be clicking the automatic PSF. You can use the default, but I usually like to use the sharpen stars at about 0.2, and you can adjust the halos as well to your liking. Like I do have a little bit of some halos, especially with this bright star here. We can kind of reduce it a little bit just by dragging that slider, but we are going to be running Blur Exterminator on both of these again with this method to do a little bit of some stellar sharpening and to kind of make a little bit more intricate details. And there we go, we have now applied Blur Exterminator again. We'll focus on this region here, the kind of the before and after, just to see the amount of details that are picked up. You can see it shrink the stars a little bit and just brought up a little bit more detail through both of these images. So that's the really nice part with Blur Exterminator, is it helps with deconvolution. So after that, now we are going to be starting to section out our channels so we can get our hydrogen alpha, our sulfur 2, and our oxygen data. But before anything else, just depending on how you stacked your data, you have to make sure that these two images in itself are basically lined up with each other. So you have to make sure of that, because if you happen to extract these and they don't line up properly, they are just going to be, you know, having some bigger issues. So we are going to be going to processes, all processes, and then find a tool which is called star alignment. You can use the reference image, which you can just go over and just drag and drop it in, and then you take this little triangle and then you just drop it over this image here. So this gives the command to line up both of those together. If you happen to shoot them on different nights, or you have a little bit of a different tilt with that, but that will be able to basically align these perfectly with each other over top. Which luckily, when I stacked this, I did this in the same night, so everything is all the same. So now the real fun begins on how to isolate our channels out and start building our SHO palette. So what we are going to be doing, we're going to rename these so we know which ones we're working with. So for the HA03, I'm basically just going to label it HA03. And for this one, I'm going to name it S203. Now what we are going to be doing is splitting the channels up. So we're going to go to both of them. We're going to start with the HA03 first. We're going to go up here and find the split RGB channels. So what happens is it takes our color images and it puts them into R, G, and B. So with hydrogen alpha, our signal will be in the red channel. So if you do automatic stretch, you can see there's a lot of hydrogen data in here, and we're just going to simply rename this as HA, and we are going to put that aside for now. Now we are left with the blue and the green channel. As you see, the green is a little bit more stronger than the blue because with the Bayer matrix on color cameras, especially with these ZWO cameras, they are RGGB, so you're getting double the pixels for green than you would for the blue or the red channel. So of course green is going to look a little bit better. So this is where our oxygen data is located. So we're going to combine these together. So we're going to go ahead and rename the green channel with just the letter G, and the blue channel with B. So now we're going to take these two together and we're going to create our oxygen channel for this, at least for the first one. There is going to be a little bit of some pixel math, which I will provide this down in the description as well for you. We're basically going to work in the RGBK section, and we're going to use this PixelMath B times 0.2, which is the blue channel, plus green times 0.8. Then we're going to make sure to create a new image, and it's in grayscale. Go ahead and combine it. And now we have our first oxygen channel from our filter, from our HA03 filter. So we can get rid of the blue and that green channel. And we're just going to rename this as O31. So we're going to go ahead and stick that aside. So our image on the left here is done. So we're just going to stick that over in the corner. So the next thing we're going to be working on is the S2 and O3. We're going to do the same exact steps. We're going to split the RGB channels. So we're going to be left with R, G, and B. But this time in the red channel is not going to be hydrogen alpha. This is where your sulfur data is located. You can see we got some nice detail around there on the side, so that looks really good. So we're going to go ahead and rename this one S2. We're going to minimize this and put it off to the side. And now we are left yet again with the blue and green channels. So here we are. We're just going to do the same steps yet again. Rename this channel just G for green, and this channel for B for blue. Once again, gonna open up PixelMath, try to have this set, and use the same expression as before. B times 0.2 plus G times 0.8. Create a new image and apply. And this is our second O3 channel. And we're just going to rename that O32. We're going to get rid of the old blue and the green channel. We'll minimize the S2O3 and stick that off to the side. So now we have two oxygen channels that we need to combine together, so we have one master oxygen 3 in general, which also will take a little bit of some pixel math as well. So here is the formula that I like to use for this. I take equal weights from both sides, so we have O31 times 0.5 plus plus O32 times 0.5. So those together, make sure it's grayscale. Hit the square. And then now you should have your master O3 file. We can go ahead and minimize these older S2s, these older O3s, and stick them aside. So now we have our hydrogen alpha, our oxygen 3, and our sulfur 2. Now the fun begins. We get to combine all three images together, but we have to make sure they are stretched equally with each other. So there is a couple ways of doing this. You can do it manually through the histogram transformation. If you have the Easy Processing Suite repository, which I'll find that and put that in the description below, or you have Bill Blanchen's custom scripts as well that you can just drag and drop over, and they pretty much linear fit everything together. So that's what we're going to do first before combining our channels together. So let's go ahead and soft stretch our images right now. So there's hydrogen alpha, there is our oxygen 3, and then our sulfur 2. So now let's combine the images and see what we come up with. So I will be using under processes, all processes, and then we are going to find LRGB combination. So since we are going to be using an SHO palette, the luminance, I'm going to use the hydrogen alpha for our luminance, since we didn't actually shoot luminance in itself. So we'll use the strongest signal that we have, which is the hydrogen alpha. For the red channel, that's where you're going to put your S2. In the green channel, this is your HA. And for the blue, we're going to put O3. And then you're going to combine this globally, and you'll start to have what looks like to be a fairly green image overall, because the hydrogen alpha signal is very strong and it kind of overpowers a lot of it. So here we go. Here is our, right off of the bat, SHO that we start to work with. Of course, we get a little bit of some magenta stars here and there, but we'll be able to take care of those within time. So putting all the data together, this looks great already, but it seems really green, and that's a problem because we don't really like overly green, or maybe some people like it. We're trying to go with the more traditional Hubble palette that you would see from NASA. So the first thing we are going to work with is getting rid of the stars right now. So we are going to be using a tool known as Star Exterminator, which is from RC Astro. But you can also do this through StarNet, which is a free process in with Pixinsight to do the kind of similar thing. I just like RC Astro's Star Exterminator because it just seems like it does a lot better of a job. So we're going to go ahead and generate our star image on screen the stars and do the large overlap. Which, depending on the size of your image, this may take a few minutes. Alright, there is our stars. We're going to rename it stars, and we will work with it a little bit later. Stick that off to the side. Now we are left with our starless image, and now we're going to be starting to play with a little bit of the colors. But one of the best tools out there, and it's free, especially when working with narrowband data, it's something called narrowband normalization. This is a wonderful tool that you can put right in your Pixinsight. You can find it under processes, all processes, and then narrowband normalization. See, you have some wonderful tools right on hand to be able to kind of colorize a little bit of your image, and it makes it a lot simpler than trying to do it the manual way like before. So what we are going to use is the real-time preview. And you see it defaults it right now to HOO, which if you're just doing a single, dual band filter, this is what you would want to use, is the HOO. But since we are using the Hubble palette and we have provided the actual images for the Hubble palette, we'll go over to SHO. And you see it kind of starts taking off a little bit of the green out of it and kind of more of that goldish that we're looking for. You can also adjust the lightness. You can have it off if you want to preserve it. Or if you want to put more emphasis on the hydrogen alpha, you can put it more for O3, but I don't really recommend anything past the O3 or the S2 because it just makes the image look very strange. So you can adjust it to however you like. Seems like just having the lightness off is the best method. So now we're going to be left to the channel controls. We have SCNR, O3 boost, and S2 boost. So the nice part is about the SCNR, if you're familiar with that, this helps with a lot of the green. This is a slider that we are going to use to kind of get all that green out of our hydrogen alpha, and you can start to see it's going away now. So you can get it to wherever you like it. You can boost the O3 in the center to kind of get more of that nice rich blue, but you have to make sure you don't go overboard with it because it will bleed out on the outside of the image. And then we can boost a little bit of the S2, basically get that nice, goldish structure right there around the edges, and this is looking pretty good. And then you can do other adjustments like with highlight reduction. You can mess with the overall brightness with it. So I'm going to put the highlight reduction a little bit up. I'm not going to mess with the shadow point or the brightness in general, but this is already looking pretty good, much better than what we were using before. So we're going to go ahead and hit the square. And then now we have our image right here combined with the narrowband normalization. You can see I have a little bit of some red there in the background. We are going to be taking care of that for the magenta wise, but right now we need to start making a little bit of some mask. We're going to go ahead and tackle that background so we are not having that weird magenta redness to it. So you are going to be using something known as the range mask, so you can be able to find that in processes, all processes, and then you can be able to use range selection. I'm going to go ahead and hit on the real-time preview, and you're going to mess with the levels here to get around the outside of this. You put in a little bit more fuzziness as well, just kind of making the outside structure in general smooth it a little bit. But for this, we're going to invert it because we want to work on the background itself first. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and bring our mask over to our image. You just drag and drop it over, and you can see all the areas that it's protecting here in red, which is mostly the interior structure of the nebula. So let's go ahead and hide the mask itself, and we're just going to use the simple tool through the scripts, utilities, and correct for magenta stars. Our target image and our mask should already be in place, and just hit execute. And there we go, voila, all that nasty magenta is now gone. So we can go ahead and get rid of our mask here, because we're not going to need that now. But we're still going to use the range selection tool, but we're going to check it out from the invert, so we can do a little bit of some sharpening that we're going to save for later. So we're going to adjust this back a little bit because I want to get a little bit more of that outside structure. For the limit here, and I'll do a little bit more of a blur. So we're going to go a little bit more since it is showing up in the background a little bit. A lot of this is definitely trial and error. Make sure you get your mask the way that you want it. That looks pretty good right there. So we are going to do a little bit of some noise reduction right now. And we're going to be using another RC Astros tool known as Noise Exterminator. Now there is other ways to do noise reduction as well. There is processes within Pixinsight. If you have the easy processing suite, there is noise reduction with that, or even just mirror denoise. You can denoise your image that way, but RC Astros is really nice, and I like to use a denoise of 0.6 with a detail of 0.2. Go ahead and drag and drop that over. I usually like to do noise reduction before I do a little bit of some sharpening, because if you sharpen and then do noise reduction, you kind of lose out the point of sharpening in general. So there we go. That took care of a lot of that background noise that we were seeing, and is looking pretty good. So now we're going to do a little bit of some sharpening. So we're going to take what we used from our range mask, drag that over, and then we are going to be going in towards the unsharpened mask, which you can find that in processes, all processes, and unsharpened mask. You want to make sure to hit the real-time preview, and I want to definitely focus in more around the inside portions of the structure, especially down here, because we really want to make this stand out from the rest of the image. So we're going to just do ever so slightly some sharpening. Don't want to go too much, because then you'll overcook your image. Just to kind of get a little bit of some nice background to it. Something like that looks pretty good. And there we go. Now we have a little bit of some dark structures in here, so what I like to do now is I'm going to remove the mask, and then we're going to go to Scripts, Utilities, and we're going to go find Dark Structure Enhance. I usually just use the default settings, but it's really going to pick up a lot more contrast in those areas surrounding this nebula to kind of make them really stand out. So this process only takes about a few seconds, but you can see the overall difference between these two when you go to the previous and then bring it back. You see it starts bringing up more of those dark structures, especially down here. So after we done some sharpening, we did some noise reduction, which we can hit noise reduction again a little bit later. Now the fun part is, let's start working on some colors. So a wonderful tool that has become available, which I'll be able to provide as well, is something called the Color Mask Mod. So you'll be able to find that in Scripts, Utilities, Color Mask Mod. And this script here is also made by Mike Cranford, Boris, and Rick Stevenson. These are the developers for this. It's also a nice free tool to use, but the nice part is you can use this to make color masks. So say at first we want to work on our sulfur data, which is that nice goldish color through here. You can actually click on the image itself. That's just to kind of get a range of what kind of colors we can use to make our mask, and then we can actually confine the areas on this color wheel to make color masks, so we're only working on certain ones. So we're going to work on the sulfur data first. So this is going to create our mask in general, and you can see that's right focused around the outside of here, and it's already blurred. So let's go ahead and add that to our image, and we're going to open up the curves transformation. So we're just going to add a little bit of some saturation to this. As you see, if I bring up the saturation, it's starting to look a little bit more gold. But we can also add a little bit of some reds and some oranges to it. I won't go too extreme with this. You know, something just to differentiate out of that. Probably hit it one more time, and there we go. I'm happy with that. Alright, so we have some color, a little bit some goldish and oranges in our sulfur data. Go ahead and get rid of that mask. And now we're going to work on the oxygen there in the center, that nice blue, really try and make that pop out. So we're going to do the same thing under Scripts, Utilities, Color Mask Mod. We're going to zoom in on this image here. We're going to see what kind of color range we got here in our oxygen data, which is sitting right between 210. So let's go ahead and make our color mask for the oxygen. There we go. Drag that over. Reopen the curves transformation. We'll start bumping up some saturation in the blues. Add a little bit more stronger blue. There we go. Now we're looking like a nice image. You can either add a little bit of green or tile it back if you want purple. I'm going to add a little bit more green to it. There we go, nice and happy with that. Don't want to go too extreme for this. And there we go, we have enhanced our image a little bit for the colors. Now we can do other things and try to add, more lightness to the center of the image. Which we can reuse our old range mask for that. And bring it back over. Then we can go with the RGB and K. Because then we can add a little bit of some, more contrast to the image on the inside. Only just a little bit. Because I really want to make these pillar areas shine. And there we go. That little bit should help. Alright. So, pretty much there. I'm happy with these results. And we have, our golds, we have our blues, we have some reds, a little bit of some green left over, but not too bad. But now let's go ahead and start taking care of our stars and get the magenta out of them for one thing. So let's go ahead and open up our stars. You can see there's a lot of magenta. And this is a very simple process as well. All you have to do is go under Scripts, Utilities, and correct magenta stars. And I normally don't like to use a mask for it because I want to make sure all of it is gone. And there we go. We have some color back in these stars. At least they are not magenta anymore. But we also want to make sure that there isn't any green hues in the invert, which there still is a little bit. So we're just going to run some SCNR right over it in the invert, which you can do that by using Control and I. So there we go. Now we have our stars corrected. Now let's do the final touch and add the image together. So we got to make sure that our stars are just named stars. And then our image here, our starless image, is named starless. Now there is a Pixinsight formula that I like to use to combine the stars and rescreen them back. And I'll provide this down in the description as well. You can see the annotation here. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new image. Make sure that a color space is in color and hit apply. And there we go. We have combined the stars with our starless image. And there is a little bit of some brown in the background where you can do a little bit of some final calibration with the histogram just to get it to wherever you like it. If you think the background's a little bit too bright, you can bring down the slider here. That looks pretty good. You can also adjust the colors in itself. You can tone back the reds a little bit, ever so slightly. If you see like there's still a little bit of some noise in the image, you can run Noise Exterminator anytime that you want to. Like, I'm gonna run it again, so at least it's a nice and uniformed inside, where I did that before. And there we go, that looks pretty darn good in general. Let's zoom this all the way in, get rid of our image here, and then look at that. You don't really need mono if you want to do the Hubble palette. You can now do it with one-shot color cameras. For people, it's a little bit easier, but of course, you know, mono will always be more superior than color cameras, especially when it comes to doing narrowband data, because you'll use all of your sensor rather than using like 25% for one, 25% for the other, and 50 for, you know, green. So I hope this tutorial helps. Like I said, anything that I use in today's video, repository wise, I will bring down in description. Also leave a link to RC Astro's website, so you can go ahead and purchase those tools. Definitely highly recommend it, and continue on with this series going forward. If you have any more suggestions of what I should do for, you know, processing videos like this, please let me know. Leave a like on the video, comment, subscribe. It definitely helps me feel motivated to continue on doing this. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you get some clear skies here soon. Hopefully you have clear skies for the solar eclipse coming up, and I'll see you in the next video.